All right, we're gonna go ahead and add the midden now. I just realized I added all of this stuff on the layer I meant to save for the legend. That's okay. I moved it back below our top layer, and so everything looks back normal. But now we're gonna go ahead and add the midden. I'm gonna do that on the same layer because these shouldn't conflict at all. First thing we're gonna do again is grab our midden from over here. And so midden, there's one midden deposit over here that people sometimes use. Um, I'm not a big fan of that one, so I went ahead and created a new one. We have grass, and I'm actually going to use the grass one because a lot of the times midden grows within these little grassy patches, and I'm going to show you how to create that midden look with this grass. So we're going to copy and paste this fill or swatch into our onto our separate document over here. And then we're actually going to start just by tracing this midden. And this one we can be a lot less accurate because these have really diffuse edges. I mean, midden, the way that it forms is just a buildup of organic material. So it's very much like soil. There's gradational contacts. And so it's not, doesn't have to be super accurate, but you do want to make sure that we are capturing the character of it on the bedrock surface. In this case, this is a fake site again, but in this case, this would mean that the bedrock surface probably was above the ground, and so much, refuse, organic refuse built up that soils actually started developing on the surface. And midden is like a greasy, dark, almost nearly black soil that is a buildup of, this organic material of human waste. Shells, animal plants, and actually I hate midden because whenever we're on a site, there's always poison oak on the midden for some reason. The poison oak just follows human beings. It's like a revenge for what we've done to the earth. Anyways, what we're gonna do is get rid of the stroke on the outside of this because I said it's a diffuse boundary. And so as you can see, this just looks like a grass layer. The dark is the soil inclusions and stuff, and then those are the grass bunches. You can also create your own fills. That's what I did to create this. I took basically the fill from the granite and I resized it a little bit so that they're not exactly the same size. And I added these little grassy patches and a repeating pattern so that it looks, as random can be. There is repetition though, like you can see there's a repetition like here on the thing. You can work on creating your own, and I really encourage that. Always making these look better is our goal. And I'm going to show you how to make these new patterns. This is going to be really laggy, full disclosure. This part of making new swatches is really intensive on the CPU, and then while I'm recording, it's going to be pretty bad. So what we're going to do is go new swatch, and I named this one after myself, of course, because what else? But we're going to call this one midden. And then we're going to edit it with this little edit pattern button. It's going to open the screen. It's going to take forever to load. And we're going to click, maybe. There we go. It's finally open. And as I said, this is a really laggy thing, so we're just going to try this as quickly as possible. Let's open the rectangle tool, snap it to this top anchor, and try our best to drag and drop it to the bottom anchor. And once it hits that blue square, that means it's fully outlined on the outside of our swatch menu. Oh. And for our fill, what we want to do is quickly change this to, maybe like a black. And then reduce the opacity on it all the way down to, I think I typically do 15%. As I said, this will be really laggy. This probably won't be as laggy for you guys. Just the recording software and the making the swatches for some reason uses the same exact like part of the CPU or something. I don't know. But we hit enter. Hopefully this will load. And I would spend more time messing around with this, but we're going to end up with these lines because there's a little bit of overlap, and we're just going to ignore that for now. In the future, in the legend, I'm just actually going to create one of these midden soil things so that you don't have to do this. Hopefully that's there. But I wanted to give you a brief intro on how to edit patterns and create new patterns from previously existing ones. All right, awesome. So now that we're out of the pattern menu, thank God, we can go and move on to the next part. As you can see, we've added this midden, which is seen on our sketch map, but there's also some midden here. I don't know if you can tell, there's a little bit of midden. And so what we're going to do is add the midden onto these features. And this is common for some granaries because they stored organic material in them. Sometimes there's midden in the center. Sometimes there's artifacts and flakes in the center. And it's important that we note when these things happen because there is definitely some sort of correlation. I'm actually going to go ahead and send this to the back and smooth it out quite a bit. This is an example where we can use our A tool to redo that line. And send that back to the back again. As you add more things to these, they'll get laggy and laggier. It probably won't be as laggy for you. Again, that's just the recording software for someone who hates Adobe Illustrator. I'm actually going to end the clip right here and then stitch the new one on in a second because it's just getting too long and it's getting hard to process. Okay, I'm going to lock this layer and add a new one because that should reduce some of the lag going on. Oh, no. What we're going to do next is start adding in some of this vegetation and this drainage over here. The vegetation can be added just by copy and pasting from this legend here. We've made some really good ones over the years. This pine tree is, like, for example, we made this one just to fill in. And in this case, the pine tree is actually the datum tree, I think. It's located up here. And then we'll put that one in last. You can rotate these, like I was talking about using the rotate tool. You want to make sure you're containing aspect ratio. Sometimes you might not want to use aspect ratio. Sometimes you want to create some unique shapes. It does get kind of funky though, just fair warning. But I'll place the oak tree like that. And I'm actually going to speed the rest of this video and add the rest of these plants in. I'm going to use this for manzanita because this looks like manzanita to me. And this is what I've done for all of my other ones. And so this is an example of how you can change your sketch maps. As long as you're sticking to a system and you put it in the legend, you can change the way things look to make it look better. I like the way this looks for manzanita, and I like the way that this looks for mountain whitethorn, because mountain whitethorn is notoriously pokey. All right, I'm going to speed this up and get back to you guys in a second. All right, now that we've gone ahead and added those, let's take a step back and take a look at how it's looking. I think it looks pretty good. I think we should get rid of these first of all. We can always copy and paste those later. And then let's add in the seasonal drainage that goes in over here. If you remember, that's on this layer. It should be. We can go ahead and delete those. Let's lock these up and go back to our top layer. Turn on our overlay, and then begin adding our seasonal drainage. For the most part, I just like sticking to what they've drawn on here. Sometimes you have to go a little bit off in order to make it fit, but at the end of this, we're actually going to resize this so that it fits properly. And so no worries. For this, we're going to smooth out this line quite a bit because it's a stream bank. It is really just a visual estimate. And then we're going to copy and paste it for the other side. This is the lazy way of doing it, but it looks pretty good in the end product. So there we go. We have two sides of a stream bank now. And then we want to make sure these don't actually have a fill. And turn the width back up to 1 point. And then we're going to do something new and add a dashed line. With dashed line in this, there's different ways you can do this. I like the way that it looks when you do a 4 dash, a 4 gap, and then a 6 dash. It kind of adds this differential length. And so, that's a good example of making your own dashes. And you can do the same thing with like 1, 1, 2 or 6, 6, 8 or 8, 8, 12. I just like the way that these dash lines looks rather than just a typical dash. And it's good for if you have multiple types of dash lines, having different like schematics for what those dashes are going to look like. Let's go ahead and add in the arrows now, and these are pretty easy. You can just go ahead and click down the main drainage. We want to make sure that we're preserving, which way the drainage was flowing, so that people are trying to relocate the site, which way is downhill. Let's go ahead and select all these by holding Shift, and then we're actually going to turn off the dash on them and smooth them out. And then we're going to use the inbuilt arrow tool to just turn them into arrows, because that's the easiest way of doing it. Sweet. Go ahead and grab all of these, open up the stroke menu again, and go to the arrowheads. I think it's this one that'll point north, I hope. Sometimes it's kind of random and you have to pick which one it is, and then if not, you can just change it later. I look at this arrow looks, and there we go. We have the preservation of which way the water is going. For our next step, I think we should start adding our labels. And then finally, we will add our legend. The one thing that I don't like with how this is looking is that there's no space to put our legend on the bottom, and we still need our scale bar. But we'll just kind of talk about, working around those issues later. For now, let's start adding our feature labels. So feature 1 is this bedrock outcrop itself. That's the one that is hosting the mortars. Feature 2 is these two rock rings, but I'm actually going to break them up and change this in the original file again. This is going to be feature 2, this is going to be feature 3, and this is going to be feature 4. Just because that's more typical of what happens in the field. Again, this is a mock site, so we can kind of play around with things. But in order to get you ready for what's going on in the field, feature 2, feature 3, feature 4. When we're adding on our labels, we want to be using Arial because any other one just typically doesn't look as good. It has too much complexity, and then compression can make the letters look weird. Arial is just the easiest to read and stands out the most. Then we want to use size 10-point font for almost everything. It's just the right size on the DPR form for reading. And for this one, we can start with F02. Your settings should be saved for each and every one that you're doing of here. This one we can do F03. What we actually want to do for these rock rings as well, because sometimes it can be pretty unclear with how these are laid out just from a bird's eye view. But as you can see here, there's a general circle pattern here, and another circular pattern here. So let's go ahead and add a dashed line to indicate that these are, in fact, circular objects. So it's probably going to have your last fill that you were using. That's okay, we can change that in a second. And you want to make sure these circles are pretty tight around what's going on. You can smooth them out quite a bit before turning off the fill and adding a stroke of 1 point. Actually, let's do 0.5. That way it just is a little bit more subtle. And we can do 446. I think we'll go with the 224 here, just again to change it up. And that way when we turn off this top layer, we can see that this is feature 3 here. It's kind of denoting that these are separate from one another. Oop, made a mistake. This should be feature 4. Let's go ahead and repeat that for these as well. If your line is overlapping the top like this, let's go ahead and send it to the back. Oh, yeah. So for this case, you might actually have to, well, here's a lesson. You might have to send it back to these rocks on the surface. So we have to click on this one. Make sure you have the layer you want to send it to selected, go to arrange, and then send to current layer. And so that way it allows you to get below this rock here, whereas before we were on the bottom of this layer and we couldn't go any lower. We could just drag and drop this, but that would mess with everything else. So let's just send this to the back. And there you go. Let's add the rest of these circles on this same layer too. Great. And then we have dashed lines around our features, which denotes that they're separate from one another. Let's go ahead and add our labels onto these mortars. If you remember, this is mortar 1. Of course, you can always turn on the bottom layer at this point to recheck all those numbers. This is mortar 1. This, I believe, is mortar 2. And when we're doing these labels, we want to be careful of where we're placing them so that the screen doesn't get too crowded. All right, let's let's go ahead and resize everything so that it's taking up the right amount of space on the screen that we want it to. We're actually going to select everything here, and then we can start bleeding off the edge of this paper, just making sure that our main bedrock feature is staying on the page. I think this is probably good. We can go in and center it as well, something like this. Actually, I'm going to leave it over more on that right side so that we have space to put a legend right here. We also need space for a north arrow, and then we also need to add in our datum tree up here at the top. Let's go ahead and lock everything up again. Go back to this layer. And let's add in our datum tree. First, we take entry, add in. And then we take our datum, package also relative. Go to the top, see, and in. You can let me use these tools to show you a little bit for not perfect, but I think that's good. All right. Now I think we can finally turn off that top layer and begin adding a legend and a scale bar. On our scale bar, we're going to want to use a really big one because this is a really big site. This one is the 0, 5, 10 meters. And we're going to get into resizing things, making sure we're using the right size text, that kind of thing. So as you can see, this is 1600, and we're going to want to go all the way to 600 for 10 meters. I wonder if it's more appropriate to use a smaller one. I don't think it is, just because that would be very small, something like that size. This one looks like it's more appropriate in size. This is something that you'll figure out as time goes on. But first, let's go ahead and make sure that these are the right size. We want these to be 10 point, just like everything else. Make sure that they're in Arial. And make sure that it is spanning 10 meters. Let's turn off that top layer. What we're going to want to do next is space out these letters so that they match the bottom. And then we're going to center everything to itself using this new tool that I'm going to show you. Go to Properties and go to Align, and we're going to go to Horizontal Align Center. When you have multiple objects selected, it'll allow you to center all those objects relative to one another. And when you only have one object selected, it will center relative to the entire background, like the letter. Remember the letter that we started with? It'll center to that. So we can go ahead and hit Horizontal Align Center, which makes sure these are centered to one another. And then we actually want to do the group function to turn these into one object, and then hit the center again to send it to the middle of the page. We're actually just going to leave this drainage going off to nowhere because we aren't sure where it goes. And it's kind of bad science to just edit where it is going because we think it might be going that way. I think I'm actually going to grab everything again and just size it down just a little bit, making sure that we're sizing down our scale bar with it. Let's go ahead and move this down to the bottom of the page and make sure it's centered again. I did that just because the page was a little bit crowded on the top and bottom, and I wanted to make sure that we had enough space to read this properly. All right, in the next segment, I'm going to show you how to add a legend and how to add a north arrow and make sure everything is all kosher. All right, this should be the final set of steps. The first thing we're going to do is add in a north arrow. Pretty easy. We just copy paste it in. I'm going to put it in this top left or top right corner because we're going to put our legend in the top left. It's just one of those feng shui things, having that balance. I think it just helps with the overall look. And then we're going to copy over our legend. This I'm going to show you how to do one of them and then add the rest, and then I'm going to show you how to align all of them just to save on time. And this is one of those things where you'll learn over time how to make it look as neat and professional as possible. We're going to want it pretty big. I like making it bigger than we'll ever need it, really. Let's center these things to one another. All right, so First, let's talk a little bit about the order of what we want on our legend. The first thing that we absolutely want is our datum. Our datum is the most important piece of information on this map. The next thing is our features. And so we'll probably put mortars and then granaries, just because there are more mortars than granaries. And then after that, we can start adding everything else. I like putting the granite on the bottom of the legend, and then putting the plants on top of that. The seasonal drainage can go on top of the plants, and you'll see what I mean about ordering in a little bit. Artifacts will come right after features, and we'll talk a little bit about that more. But for right now, I'm going to show you how to do the datum. The easiest way for doing this, because there's only ever one datum, is just copying this, pasting it in. I like grouping it. And then what we're going to do over here is look at the width and height transformation measurements. Sorry if you can hear construction noises. For this, in the legend, we're going to want our images on this left-hand side to only ever be 20 point max. Oops. So you want to do first is hit this. This maintains the aspect ratio, maintains the width and height ratio. And then we're going to change this to 20 points max. If you need to, you can go back in here, ungroup, select this pine, and then change the scale of the stroke just to make it look back to normal again. I'm going to regroup these. And then we're going to add in our text box. In this, we just do a dash like this, and then what it is, this is datum pine. I'm actually going to increase the width of our legend here, just so that we have more space to write. Generally, you want to have them all the same, so you can copy over legends from previously made sketch maps, just so that it's very standardized. For an example, just for this example, that we're going to stick with this. So that's an example of this right here. I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video starting right here and do the rest of these, adding them in, and you can follow along if you really need the help. All right, welcome back. I've went ahead and added everything in, and right now we're going to go ahead and begin the process of aligning everything. Something I noticed here is this, some of these are a little bit off center shape. You just want to make sure that the maximum is 20 point. But first things first, what we're going to want to do is select all of these. I also had to change the size and shape of everything a couple times just to make sure it all fit. And then I added a fill so that we can, it doesn't overlap too much with the image behind it. First thing we're going to do is center all of these to one another and scoot them over as far as we can, just like that. And now what I'm going to do here is select this one and this one, the one that it correlates to, and we're going to center them a vertical align center tool like this. And then we're going to do Control G on this individual one. Next, we're going to select these two, do the same thing, vertical align center, and repeat that for the rest of these. Okay, I lied a little bit. We're actually going to want to ungroup these momentarily and make sure that all of these are actually aligned left. So what we're going to do, because these are all different sizes, we want to make sure they're aligned to at least one side, and that's going to be the left-hand side. So we're going to align like this on the left. And now we can go ahead and group all of these because these are vertically and horizontally, and yeah, they're all aligned to one another, just like I was talking about. Now that we've done this, we can do the final step of aligning everything, and that is going into here, the drop-down menu from the Align, and Distribute Center Objects. And that does is that perfectly aligns everything so they're spaced evenly from one another, and there we go, we have a complete legend. All right, so I originally ended the video there and said that it was a complete sketch map, but I decided to change a couple things. The first thing I did was take all of the objects, everything on the sketch map together that isn't, like the legend or the scale or the north arrow, and I moved it all over to the right to give space for that legend, and then I moved that legend over just a little bit just to make everything balance. That's one of the things that we really want to focus on, is making sure that there is a certain visual congruency with what we're doing, and it just makes it look more professional. If the legend is tagged onto the very end, that makes it very difficult. As well as that, this is still floating in midair, and what we can do here is something like stream continues. You might be able to put that down over here, and this one looks like it's coming off the map anyway, so it's okay. Little notes like this, say a bedrock outcrop continues, you can also say that. There's all sorts of little tricks for what we can do here. I also want to show you how to export these properly, because it can be pretty difficult. The first thing we're going to do is just to close up all of these. By the way, I'm clicking and holding to lock all of those. I don't think I ever told you guys that. And so that helps when you're trying to do everything at once. We're going to create one new last layer, and we're going to go to our rectangle tool, and we're going to go, it may look like we're getting rid of all of our hard work here, but we're going to cover up this entire thing going from corner to corner, making sure that we're at the exact corner to the exact corner. I promise we're not going to leave it like this. We're going to hit no fill, and what that does is it places this invisible polygon over everything, and so when we export it as a JPEG, it won't shrink to fit. So basically what happens if you export it, it doesn't know where to close the ends of the the page, because it doesn't register the page as part of the image when you're exporting to JPEG. And so by doing this, adding this invisible polygon, it actually will keep the edges of this page, maintaining the correct aspect ratio, and making sure that these things aren't touching the edge of the page where they shouldn't be. Maybe I'll just show you guys an example of that really quickly. We'll delete this, and then we're going to File, Export as. We're going to use a JPEG. We're just going to export it right into here, and we're going to put it Ian's sketch map. And this is probably the one you guys will have as an example for a completed object. You can check out my layers and how I've done everything, and maybe even fix everything. The thing I'm doing here is bumping up the quality and the DPI. This is kind of expensive in terms of space being used, but I think it's worth it because you're not getting any issues with compression in the final image. You get to keep all of these nice details that we've made. So there we go. We've gone ahead and added that. We took away the invisible polygon so we could show you what it looks like when you don't add it. So let's go ahead and add it back. I'm just doing Control Z. Let's export again. Oh, there's a lot of options in here. There's a lot of weird stuff. I haven't deviated far from just creating the sketch maps before. So we're just going to do with invisible poly. Okay, so I reopened this. Sorry, I opened up something I wasn't supposed to open there. Can't show you the confidential stuff behind the scenes. This is the example of it without the poly. So as you can see, it trims to this very edge. It like fits to it. It does this weird thing. It fits to the edge of this S, and it fits to the top up here. And when we have the invisible polygon, it doesn't do that. So you have a gap on the bottom here, gaps all around the edges, and it preserves that aspect ratio for when we insert it into the TPR form. All right, guys, that's all I really have for making these Bedrock Mortar videos. Maybe I will make more in the future if we have more questions. And since I am graduating, I probably won't be around here for much longer, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'll make sure to leave my personal email with the CRF so that you guys can contact me if need be. And that's all, really. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope this helps.